Good morning. This is Father Stephen Kelly from St. John's Church in Detroit. And today we are continuing our series of daily morning meditations, looking usually at one or another of the readings that are appointed for morning and evening prayer, what is known as the daily office lectionary. But I do want to go off on a tangent again today, as we did a couple days last week, and I want to talk about a saint whose feast day actually fell over the weekend, and we will be commemorating here at St. John's on Tuesday, and that is St. Vincent de Paul. Now, you're saying, wait a second, that's really familiar, St. Vincent de Paul. I've heard of that saint, and you probably have because there is a wonderful Roman Catholic charitable organization called the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. They have thrift stores. They do all sorts of wonderful work in helping the poor with education, medical needs, as well as clothing and housing and food. And so you certainly do recognize the name. You've probably seen their big blue boxes parked in parking lots where you can make donations. And I'm not ashamed to say that I've bought more than one or two items of clothing over the years from the Society of St. Vincent de Paul in order to support their mission, as well as the fact that I'm just pretty darn cheap. And so I do like to go rummage sailing, and I do like to go thrift shopping. So now you know that about Father Kelly. Anyway, the reason why I want to talk about St. Vincent de Paul is not only because of his great sanctity and the impact that he has made, but also because he has a connection to something else that is near and dear to my heart. St. Vincent de Paul was born in the late 1600s and was brought up in an educated family. At one point, I think if I'll get the exact date, but 1605 or 1607, he was making a journey for some property to look at some property, and he was kidnapped by Barbary pirates and sold into slavery. He spent 2 years under 3 different owners. One owner was a fisherman, and he was not real good about being on the water, so he was sold to a second person. That person died, and then he was sold to a third person. And then that person, who was actually an apostate Christian who had converted to Islam, eventually came to his senses by God's grace and brought St. Vincent back to France and gave him his freedom. St. Vincent was ordained a priest and began really hard ministry for the love of Jesus Christ. He was a chaplain to galley slaves. Those are the people who row the ships. He became a chaplain to prisoners. And he also made it his mission and ministry to help to improve the lot of Christian clergy, of the priests of the church in France. All throughout the history of the church, we see these kind of waves of ups and downs in the laxity or the attempts of spiritual growth among the clergy. One of my other favorite saints, an Italian, Charles Borromeo, is famous for the seminary system because he found that in his diocese in Milan, the clergy were terrible about the spiritual life as well as their education. Well, St. Vincent de Paul had the same sort of idea. He began an organization called the Congregation of the Mission. He also helped to found a religious order, which is now known as the Sisters of St. Vincent de Paul. But primarily, he had really a twofold mission. One was for the education of the clergy and for their growth in the spiritual life so that they could then pass that on, right? Nothing is worse than a parish with a poor priest. Spiritually, the parish will not grow in the spiritual life or in numbers or in any other thing. But so St. Vincent de Paul knew that if he could help the clergy to become holy, that would impact France and help them to become holy as well. So a very important understanding of that. But also, he was deeply devoted to the care and ministry of the poor, both education and their physical needs. And the church, in its fits and spurts, has done a good job. At times, maybe can do better, always can do better, actually. When Jesus said the poor are always with us, that doesn't mean that we have to ignore them or we shouldn't minister to the poor, but rather the poor is with us always, and that means we will always have great opportunities to share the good news of Jesus Christ with the poor, as well as share our material goods and our time and our love with the poor as well. What a great promise from Jesus that if the poor are with us always, we will always have the opportunity to serve others, especially the poor, in Jesus' name. And St. Vincent had a wonderful love of Jesus Christ and a love of the poor. And, those two are certainly do go hand in hand. We may know from more modern times, Mother Teresa, who did such a wonderful job of ministering to the poor as well, had that same sort of idea. So what's the connection to something that's near and dear to me? Well, there was a priest in England who found himself unexpectedly on a leave in France, and that priest found himself, while there, he picked up a book on the life of St. Francis de Sales, or St. Vincent de Paul, sorry, wrong one, St. Vincent de Paul, and in reading about his rule of life for the Congregation of the Mission, priests who were dedicated to the propagation of the Catholic faith, to personal holiness, and for serving the poor, he then came back to his parish, and Charles Lauder founded what is known as the Society of the Holy Cross, which you might recognize from the Latin initials for the organization after my name, the SSC. Father Michael Bedford, our retired associate priest, is also a member of the Society of the Holy Cross. So our rule of life is based on the Congregation of the Mission that was founded by St. Vincent de Paul. So there's certainly a wonderful connection for me in my desire to learn how to love Jesus more and more, and learn how to love others, be they rich or poor, in Jesus' name. So I hope that you have a wonderful Monday, and I hope that you will take a moment to thank God for the many opportunities you will have in your life to minister to others in Jesus' name. May God bless you.